Welcome back, everyone, to Discipleship and Dollars, where we bring the light to the hustle. Today, we have one of my favorite guests so far. We have Chip Cook. He just boasts a pretty amazing resume, and he's going to bring a lot of value. Chip Cook, welcome.
Great to be here. Thanks for the invitation, and look forward to having a good conversation today.
Yeah, it's going to be so good. Well, so Chip, reading your bio, West Point grad, Stanford grad, BYU grad. Run me through, how'd you get there?
Too many degrees. Too many, yeah.
Who are you? Tell us your story.
Hey, thanks for having me first. I appreciate you guys and the focus on discipleship. I think it's incredible what you're doing here. But, it's interesting. I look back and I couldn't ever predict where I am now, where I was when I was a young buck trying to, get settled in or choose a career, what to do after high school or whatever. But I can certainly say that the Lord at every step has directed me, whether I knew it or not, as I look back, I can see the breadcrumbs, I can see the influence, I can see the hand. But it seldom came as it has at many times came as a slap in the face or a hey, not that direction, but I need you over here kind of thing.
Yeah, that happens sometimes.
But anyhow, I can certainly I feel blessed and blessed to be where I am, and I know the Lord's played a hand in every step. But born and raised outside of Houston, Texas, 6 of 8 kids. Grew up in my mom was a school teacher. My dad was in real estate, did some real estate development, and there were in that day, in my high school years, my dad had some rough times, and so I remember as a formative moment, I guess, my dad going and asking my sister for some tip money. She was a waitress at Pizza Hut.
Oh man!
To help pay for groceries and our lunches.
Wow!
After some rough times in his career, and so. Not empathy there a lot, and we all knew that we gotta go out and work and figure our things out. But at that point in time, I realized I want to have something to fall back on. I wanted to be my own guy financially, and prepare myself for a career that I could not put myself in a rough spot like that. I just saw the challenges, the stress on the family, the stress in his life, and ultimately. The way I see things is, money's a great resource. It's a resource that can do a lot of things, and hopefully it gives us the opportunity to do good if we're able to, have something to help us serve, help us help others, and it's just a resource. It can do a lot of other things than good, but that's hopefully where we're choosing to use it. But so at that point, I decided I want to have the best education I can have.
Yeah. I
want to have a career that everybody needs, and so for me at that time I wanted to be a doctor. You have to be a doctor, and guess what? And then I said, okay, where can you be a doctor and everybody needs a doctor at? And it was the Army. And so for me, and then I found out about West Point, and West Point, they pay for college. It's a great education. So for me, it was lined up. I was like, and then they started to recruit me to play football. So sure enough, all these, this is where I wanted to go.
Lining up.
Yeah. So for me, it was a great educational opportunity. Got to West Point and loved it. Had a great experience. Left after my second year. Went on a mission to Russia. Came back.
Russia? I didn't know that.
Yeah. Wow. Served in St. Petersburg, Russia. Best mission in the world. We don't have any Americans over there anymore. But really cool thing though. One of the cool. I grew up different generation than you guys, but back in the day, I grew up as a young guy. Before the wall fell.
Yeah.
So I went to Russia in '95, and so it was probably 5-6 years after the wall fell. So we were still a bit of a novelty, even in a big city like St. Petersburg. You get over there to Russia, and you find out that this was the enemy. Russia was the Soviet Union. It was it was the mothership. And so we used to play Americans versus the commies or what, like that kind of stuff.
Of course.
That kind of tradition or whatever. And what you really quickly find out is that people are people everywhere.
Yeah.
And the more I've gotten to travel the world and meet people pretty much on every continent, we're all children of our Father in heaven. We all put our pants on one leg at a time, and we all have the same struggles, the same challenges. We get up, most of us, hope to keep the lights on, feed our kids, survive essentially, and some have higher calling, some have a higher vision, but bottom line is we're all children of our Father in heaven. And it was quick, easy to love, easy to learn. Cultures are different, food, all the things that make cultures and places different. Loved my experience there, but that was one of the quickest things I found was these people aren't enemies. These are my brothers and sisters, and so really, quick, come from I'm gonna go to Russia. Quick change of mind there. Anyway, came back from my mission, finished my time at West Point, and so I had my major. I'd studied life sciences, biology to get ready to go to med school. And had done all the prep. As I look back, for me, it was my grandfather was a doctor actually in the military as well, and so that was part of the inspiration. But I got to the end of my time at West Point, and I didn't want to go back to school. West Point, it was stressful enough and challenging enough, and so I wanted a break. And so I was going to go serve in the military, and the plan was to go back to West Point, or go back to medical school at some point, a year or two after, which is fairly common for folks that do that in the military. So I was going to go get some actual Army experience. I loved, I say loved. I enjoyed and wanted to kind of get some seasoning, get some understanding, and get some leadership experience. So chose to go out and be an infantry officer.
Wow.
And then went to Army Ranger School, Airborne School, all that stuff to go lead paratroopers and soldiers. So,
Dang.
I spent 21 years active duty in the Army as an Army paratrooper and Ranger, and jumping out of planes and going all over the place, and leading people. And that's essentially what it was. The Army's biggest weapon is its people. We have a lot of cool toys, but it's all about the people, and motivating and encouraging and training and preparing and the logistics to support those people. So had a great experience from the lowest level of a platoon, and my last assignment before retirement was working alongside a 4-star general, or 4-star admiral actually at the time, and it was sort of the term is an executive assistant, which connotes a secretary in the civilian world, but that's actually kind of the. So anyway, traveled alongside a 4-star all over the place, and got to see and do things and be a part of things, and that you don't get to do. And for me, even if I was still in, I wouldn't be a 4-star. So anyhow,
that's amazing.
Awesome.
Yeah, so it was a cool exposure, great experience, great for the family. So my wife and I actually met on our missions in Russia. We were both serving there. We became friends, and we came back. Became closer friends. All right? I joke that we dated on P-days, but she doesn't like that.
I mean, we've all been out.
She doesn't like that. No, became acquainted afterwards, and we got married right after West Point. Like 5 days later, drove across the country as fast as I could. We got married here in the Salt Lake Temple, and I love it. And we just celebrated our 26th wedding anniversary. So
congrats, 26 years.
Yeah, she's been an awesome Army wife. We moved all over the place. Had 12 moves in the 21 years.
12 moves in 21 years.
Yeah,
Holy cow.
Yeah, all over the place. And so had a great experience. Have 5 kids. So 21 years in the military. My final assignment brought me here to BYU. I was in charge of the ROTC at BYU and UVU and SUU.
Really?
And Dixie and.
Dang.
And so I kind of, that was an interesting lead in, and we'll probably talk about failures, but how I got here was actually from a failed opportunity, or failed what I viewed as a failure at the time, which looking back, it was one of those moments where I knew I can see where the Lord pointed me, and it was a reason. So it was a blessing to be out here. So in that time frame, anyway, prepared to transition from the military. Picked up my MBA at BYU while I was on campus there, and prepared. I knew I wanted to get into business. Kind of saw that. Interesting story actually. So while at West Point and kind of leading up to that, I was really driven by service, even coming out of high school. Yeah. Not so much driven, and that's the interest in being a doctor, but not so much about, business and certainly, everybody's influenced a little bit by money and by prestige and that kind of thing. Never hurts, but for me, you get to West Point and you're just indoctrinated. Our motto is duty, honor, country, and we live by a honor code that we will not lie, cheat, or steal, nor tolerate those who do. And so to have a place where you're focused on duty, honor, and country, and everybody just trusts each other implicitly, it's a special place.
That's special. Wow.
Yeah, and so it's a great place to thrive. And for me, it was just like, man, this is the right culture and the right fit. And so it was. And so being in the military, and that's not necessarily applied to the entire military. That's a West Point. That's a West Point kind of microcosm, but it is, largely we do trust each other implicitly, and we have to, because our lives are dependent on each other. And so, yeah. So anyhow, it was a great place to start. And so I was during my career, partway through my career, I had an opportunity to go to Stanford, and we're actually at a social it was a bunch of LDS folks that go to Stanford, grad students, and I was talking to a friend of mine. He actually went on to he's a professor at Harvard.
No way.
He was getting his PhD at Stanford. But anyway.
Oh man.
And I kind of had this. I'm a service first kind of guy.
Sure.
That's where my heart is, and less about business. And I mean, not that it's bad, but my focus is on service. Yeah. And patriotism and that thing. He's like, and he looked at me. He's like, well, what's more patriotic than an American business? He's like, it's the engine that makes the thing run. And I was like, you know what? You are right. and so I still, and so
I love that.
After I graduated, went on to an assignment, and I had the opportunity to get out, and I was getting ready to get out because I was going to go into business.
Sure.
I was going to go be part of the American machine, And it was probably one of the most foundational, biggest answers to prayer. My wife and I both had that answer, and it was a no. It was a no. Stay in. And this was in the middle of the height of Iraq and Afghanistan, the surge and everything. And I was getting ready to get out and go do it, start a career in something else. Mm-hmm. And the answer was no. And I had this clear moment in my mind. We had a clear experience. I was going someplace, and it was me out in front of a formation leading troops, really? running. So we do PT in the military. Yeah. You have a guide on as a commander. And you got this train of soldiers, symbolically and real, in reality, following their commander. And I had this image, which I had done before as a younger, at lower levels, but this was, the next thing. And it was, for lack of a better term, a vision, a moment into my future.
Yeah,
you're gonna be leading troops one day. Okay. And so, sure enough, we stuck in.
What a vision.
Even passed up a huge bonus, financial bonus that I thought I was getting out, so I passed up this bonus.
Wow.
Stayed in for another 10 years, and ended up in various places. And anyway, we'll talk. We can get into this other stuff, but yeah. So anyway, 21 years, and then retired several years ago from the Army. Spent a little bit of time with Amazon, actually not far from here. Ran the last mile delivery stuff, all the trucks here in Utah Valley.
That's so cool. Dang.
Helped run one of these sites, and then launched one up in Salt Lake. And then had this great experience to join Lease End, which is where I'm at now. I'm COO there, and we have a company that's grown from. I joined when we probably had about maybe 50 employees, and now we're up to about 150 and growing. We essentially help people buy their vehicle at the end of a lease, and so make that process super smooth, set them up with financing and that kind of thing. But have a great experience working with incredible people, talented folks, and just helping grow a business that's doing killer right now. So having fun.
I love it.
Yeah.
Like you are literally doing the most American thing, right?
Yeah.
You build a business and
hey,
you're running with
employing people, helping people, and still have that opportunity to lead and to grow and mentor and just work along great people.
There's just a theme as I've been listening to your story. It's people. Right? You literally came from this Houston land where you were struggling for money, and the Lord slowly developed you, and you went from West Point, which is, the USA, type thing, so patriotic. And you went from there to the dichotomous shift of St. Petersburg, Russia. And you learned to love the people there.
Yeah.
But then you went back to West Point, with that love, and you continue to lead people, and the Lord, to help you stay in, it showed you a vision of people.
Yeah.
And so it's just one after another. Like, that checks out to me. Like, you are a people person, and that makes sense to me. And so, like, you know, like, I just have to know, like, in terms of people, like how did the Lord's preparation for you to handle people help you towards your success with Lease End right now?
Yeah. Well, that's a good question. I no matter what organization you're in, you know, well, unless you're a single person, you know, single coder or whatever.
Yeah, that's right.
Most organizations and humanity is built on people. You know, we're here to you know, we think about the Savior, and he could have sat in a room and, you know, created the internet and created social media and pushed out his message that way, but no, he went out among people.
Yeah.
And related to people, and
that's true. Yeah.
And
so that, he literally could have made social media back then. He could have done anything.
And so, you know, organizations I've been a part of, you know, from the church, the military, you know, community service, and sports teams that I grew up playing on, and that, you know, it's about people interacting. And one of the things I learned early is that, you know, especially at West Point, it's when you're in charge, be in charge, but when you're not in charge, be a good follower, and and let that leader be in charge. And so, you know, there's times in the military you weave in and out of these leadership positions, whether you're, you know, and there's always sort of a referential or sort of you're always some kind of a leader, whether you're you know, in that position and have the title or not. Yeah. In the same way, in any role that I've been in, whether it's been in church or in the military, or, you know, in my civilian career, you know, there's not, you know, I'm not the CEO. We got a great guy doing that now, and he makes great decisions. I have the luck to work with him and have an opportunity to share thoughts on occasion on our company and different things. But, you know, we have a team of folks that we all just try to win, and we all try to do the best that we can to treat each other, treat not just the team, but also our employees and our customers, most importantly. And that's ultimately, we're all God's children, and learning to love and treat people well. So is certainly one of the things that the Savior has taught us. So.
Dude, Dex, is that not just screamed like discipleship in dollars?
Oh, yeah. We have a really cool leadership team on our company. You know, everybody, first of all, everybody in our executive team's member of the church, and a couple of them are in state presidency and bishoprics and high council. Not that positions per se matter, but certainly it's great to have a foundation of of our testimonies.
Yes, of course.
A lot of leadership experience that comes into this, and just foundational experiences that kind of helps us be on the same page in certain ways.
I love that quote that you said: when it's time to be a leader, be a leader. And when you're not the leader, be a good follower. Yeah. That's something that we've talked about a lot, the difference between a leader and a follower. Yeah. And I think there's times to be both. Yeah. Being one is not necessarily better than the other. Sure. Because when you're a leader, it's nice to have good followers. Yeah. That sustain and support you, whether it's from a gospel perspective or a business perspective. Yep. You want the people that you're leading with in the church to support you when you're making a decision. Absolutely. You make it together. And then I'm assuming, you know, like at Lease End, if there's a big decision that needs to be made, it's nice to have people to support you, whether you're making the decision or supporting the decision. So I love that quote. Yeah. There's only one CEO. There's only one stake president or bishop or father or mother or you know, but we can all. So we're all in some level of support at some point, right? Mm-hmm. And so you know, being a good teammate is just as important as being a good leader. So from a leadership perspective, when you're a leader, what would you say is the single most important characteristic or attribute to have? Curiosity. Curiosity. Yeah. As a leader, I think, you know, in some vision of a leader is the guy with his hands on his hips or gal, you know, doing this, like giving the knife hand and this is, go do this, go do that. Mm-hmm. You know, I'm giving you a task, go complete. Yeah. But when we're curious as a leader, we get to understand the people that we're working with, but we also get to understand our business better. Mm. If we understand, you know, if you're, you know, perhaps at the top or at some level of leadership, which means your hands aren't always in the grass, in the weeds, in the terms of,
your business, then you don't know what's going on with your customers, or you don't know what's going on with your product, or you don't know what's there's some level of break that you don't understand, that you may not have a perspective on. You think you do, you might want, you try to, but being curious with your teammates is a way to get to, not just to get to know them, to build trust with them, to get their feedback. Not everything they're going to say is something you're going to go and implement and change on its head, and
Sure.
But they feel valued, they feel heard, they feel like they're part of the team, and you better believe that there's some great ideas coming out of a foot soldier or out of your frontline employees. They have, I can't even tell you how many times as a military leader you come up with a plan. As an officer, your job is to plan and to direct the operation in the middle of combat or training or whatever it might be. And so you get, hey, here's the order. Okay, here's what our boss is telling us to do. Here's our part. You come back. My first thing I'd always do after I digested what my order was, I'd come back and I'd be like, all right, guys, and bring in my next level leaders. As a platoon leader, it's squad leaders. Squad leaders are enlisted guys. They've got 10 years in the Army. I've been in there a year. They're calling me sir, just because I graduated from West Point. Right? That's how it works.
Yeah.
It's weird, but it's the way. But bottom line is, I've got this training to go and execute this order. Here's what the boss is telling us to do. Here's what I think we ought to do. What do you think? Go around the room. Inputs. All right. We refine the plan, slap the table. Here's what we're doing. And the same goes when in a business. This is the business plan. This is the direction we're headed, and we might get moving this direction. But you got to be curious. You got to ask, get the feedback, all the data points as you're moving along. And there's the big data points of revenue and all the things with your customer, everything that revolves around successful financials on a business. But when it comes down to actually delivering your product or your service, it comes down to being curious with your teammates that are actually in contact with your customers and your product. So
that resonates so much. I feel like President Nelson, during there were just some talks where he really just focused on that idea of counseling with everyone and getting everyone's voices, and I feel like he definitely gave some landmark talks where he discussed counsel with everyone and like with an award council setting, get thoughts from everyone.
It's the exact same concept,
and that's always intrigued me, and just that ability to counsel together with those who because we all have some insight, and we all have something to provide.
Absolutely.
And that once again, going back to people, you are that has weaved throughout your story, and clearly that has led to your success. And so, with all your experience, with your wide variety, what does success mean to you?
Yeah. That has definitely morphed over a period. For me, I'm in high school, I'd mentioned kind of the background. We lived, what my parents did, we did well at a point in time when I was younger, and then, I told you they had some troubles. And so it was a period of time there where for me, success was I want a stable job. I want a stable income. I want to, again, that's why being a doctor and that kind of thing. And, and certainly that's a valuable thing. And, for me at this point, it's those things are still important. I think in general, it's being with the people you love, in a place you love, doing things you love, and nothing beats being around me and my family, my wife, my kids, and doing the things that we love. And so it's that to me is what success means. There's all kinds of other metrics out there, but it's simple, and I've been in places where I didn't know if I was going to make it back, and that really is a quick way of putting things in alignment when you realize that there's bigger things in life than chasing dollars. It doesn't hurt because it gives you the opportunity to do some things, but the point is it's we have people or the family. That relationship, that's where it's at.
No, that definitely makes sense. Being able to be, where you want with the people you want, that is true success. I want to just dive in for a second.
Yeah.
You said that there were moments where, you thought you may not be able to make it back and, continue. Was there a moment where you realized just family and the need for it?
I was always raised in like a strong family. That's one thing I would tell you, that as there may have been some financial hardships or challenges or whatever, my mom and my dad were incredible examples of our Savior. And we all 8 of my siblings, all 7 of my siblings, are just the best people that I know. I love them all. They're incredible, each so different and talented in so many different ways. And so having that gospel foundation and that strong family that we're all still very close today. We were all together last weekend, actually, for the most part.
I love it.
For a niece's wedding. But we, the point is, it's having that strong foundation is something I was raised with, and that's something I knew I wanted. And, was blessed to find an incredible woman that had a similar background and foundation and desire. And we were, I wouldn't say there was a key moment there, but certainly finding an incredible woman to couple with and be my companion, and I say yoke with. She is certainly dragging me along with the yoke there. But she's an incredible woman, and we have a great family. And there, being away, I spent months and months away at times from family, and that certainly for me, some people that detaches relationships. For me, my heart was always connected home, and that was for me my grounding, that grounded me, kept me focused. When not that you when you're overseas or deployed or doing that kind of thing, you're not allowed to, guys aren't drinking and doing that kind of stuff, but there's certainly other stuff they're getting into, right? But the point is, for me, it was always focused about getting home and wanting to be with my family and interacting with them, and so yeah, for me it's always been about family ever since I was little. Yeah.
Your heart was connected during these times. I think that's such a testament of the sealing covenant and just the power of sealing, and whether you're across the world in some foreign land, like, you have your heart connected, and even in times of trial, immense trial, you can almost feel that bond get stronger, and that makes sense. Yeah, I think that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, definition of success: being with the people you love in a place you love, doing the things you love. Yeah. That's a pretty awesome definition. I think all of us strive and hope to have that one day.
Yeah.
But I want to circle back to something. You touched on failure.
Yeah.
And you said you had maybe a moment in time that you maybe viewed as failure that turned out to not be so much of a failure. Yeah. So give us the rundown. Tell us about that experience.
It's powerful. I may get choked up here, but so I mentioned leading troops and being a soldier. So as an officer in the Army, particularly in the infantry, you move up the chain, and you're weaving in and out of these leadership roles. The next role that I had my eyes on at that time, 12 years or so in, was to be a battalion commander, and that's you're in charge of 800 troops, and it's a battalion, right? So massive, the Lord's battalion, right? Which you heard President Nelson talk about that, and this is a legitimate war fighting machine, right? This is what you plan for, prep for. You go through years of training, and I was in the right positions and in the right mentorship and that kind of thing, and many of my bosses had pulled me aside and, hey, this is in your future, this is what you're looking for, and this is what kind of direction you need to do, the things you should be doing to prepare for this job. And this is it's a unique setup. In a business, you're like, I love Dax, I love Dom, boom, they're my guys, put them in these positions because they're the best performers, they're the guys. It's a different position, it's a different way in the military, but bottom line is it's a faceless board that looks at files, and bottom line is the decision came out, and I was chosen as a battalion commander, but not in a unit that I wanted. And it's hard to describe, but essentially there's warfighting units, and then there's a bunch of other units that support the warfighting, whether it's basic training or whether it's different elements that aren't going to go do the warfighting function, which that to me is where the action is. That's the front of the line, and so for me, having grown up and worked my entire career to go into that direction, that for me was probably my biggest, what I at that time felt like a failure. I remember I found out that day my boss pulled me in. It's like, hey, congratulations, battalion command, and this is where you're going. This was the 4-star I told you I was working for, and even the 4-star couldn't change it. Like, this is how it's like set in stone kind of thing. And I was just like, all right, I didn't want to show my lack of enthusiasm. Got home, I literally stared at the ceiling most of that night. My almost catatonic, like, what am I doing? How did that happen? You told me to stay in the Army back here. Mm-hmm. You gave me this vision of troops, and and that's what I've been training for and working for, and pointing in that direction. And it wasn't. So with that, even so, we were looking at likely retiring after that assignment, get you close enough to that 20 years, and I ended up serving 21. But bottom line is, we had a choice to make. I was going to go either take this other battalion, which would have, wasn't the one that I wanted. It wasn't the, but bottom line, it was still a battalion. Had the opportunity to come here instead to BYU, and I was what's called the professor of military science, or it was a battalion commander kind of thing. But you're in charge of getting these cadets ready to go. And there was a unique circumstance going on there. I don't want to get in too much detail,
sure.
but I will say that because of some things going on in D.C. At the time, there were some things that put the military and BYU and the ROTC's program at risk of staying at BYU. And there were some political things going on, and I will say that BYU adamantly wanted to keep that program there. They love the connection with the military. That BYU is an incredible school, and the church loves its military connections and the fact that there's so many great people that serve in our military. But there was this kind of political force going on, trying to remove ROTCs from religious-oriented universities.
Wow.
And
dang.
And it was real, and it was one of those things. And I told you that I had previously worked for this 4-star, and I had spent a decent amount of time in the Pentagon with him and on Capitol Hill, and it was because of that experience working for that 4-star. This was in a prior assignment, so not that I had made specific connections, but I had seen how the machine works. I had knew people in certain places, but bottom line, there was now this experience that when I came to BYU, BYU and the church is savvy and smart and has a ton of resources, but I had direct contact with certain decision makers at BYU and in the church that helped them understand where the pressure point was and who to talk to and how to move along. Again, they have plenty of other resources. I know there were other people, and don't want to talk about the particulars.
Yeah.
But it was because of that situation, because of my prior experience, and then now in a position which I felt like I failed into this role. Looking back, I was pointed in this direction for a reason, and I would say, and I don't take this lightly, and I'm not trying to kind of pat myself on the back, but I was one of, if not singularly, one of few people that would have been at BYU at that time to potentially preserve the opportunity for other people to be in that program in the future. And it blesses so many lives. It's an incredible program. And because of this unique political circumstance, was able to move along and BYU and they put a lot of effort into preserving that relationship. But it was I felt like I was in a place at the right time and where I was needed to be. And that to me is one of the most singular experiences where I knew that I needed to be there. And I'll tell you, that vision I had, running with troops, it was BYU cadets. It was cadets at UVU. It was cadets at the other universities that were under me. And I had those experiences. I remember running down the chanting, we're out running around BYU campus, and I'm like, this was that answer. This was that moment. So, anyway.
That is so awesome.
Pretty unique experience. So this is probably one of the most powerful things I've ever went through. But anyway.
Well, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
It sounds like a very special and sacred experience. What you thought was going to be a huge failure you didn't know why it was happening,
Yep.
turned into probably one of the biggest successes ever.
I know ever, but for that point in time,
Yeah, for that
it,
point
it
in
made
time.
a difference for that the program that persists today. It's the university and puts a lot of support behind it, and I'd say it was a cool experience to be a part of.
Yeah.
So one of the things that sticks out is you clearly were an instrument of the Lord. Like BYU has a special, privilege, is a special cadre because it is the Lord's university. Like the Lord is in the details, and the Lord chose you as his instrument. And one of the things I think is so interesting is like when you choose to be a tool of God, you can't choose what tool you are.
Yeah.
And you were in there and you felt, to turn down, like so many opportunities because you wanted to stay in, and then you felt like you were being led in a specific direction and it didn't go the way you wanted, but the Lord ultimately, he fulfills what he promises.
Yeah.
And that is so powerful. But more than that, like fulfills it in a, in a different, maybe more meaningful way, because you are able to minister to the future leaders of the military. And so
For me, it was like, you know what a Venn diagram is, right?
Sure.
To me, it was the nexus of things that I love. I love the Army and soldiers and all the hardships and challenges and awesome, cool things that we do in the Army. And I love leading people. I love BYU athletics. I grew up in Houston. For me, that was back in the day of the '84 championship and all that stuff.
84
Watching
was
Ty
crazy.
Detmer and Steve Young and all that good stuff. So love BYU athletics and the church. And what a cool way to ended up retiring out of that role. But it was an awesome connection of three of my most passionate
So cool.
focus areas. So
God knows what we want and what we need way more than we even can acknowledge sometimes. And that is so cool. Like just that perfect combo. I think that's awesome.
Yeah. I heard a quote a little while ago, and I think this relates to this experience a little bit, maybe not to the full extremity, but the quote basically said, sometimes life seems like it's falling apart, but it's really God putting things into place.
Yeah.
And I think that can hit home for a lot of us.
Yeah.
A lot of times, we have these experiences, okay, I'm going to do this.
Yep.
And it doesn't go the way we want.
No.
And then 5, 10, 15 years down the road, we see why it happened.
Absolutely.
It wasn't falling apart, but it was God doing his thing.
One of my favorite talks, it's pretty popular, but it's quoted often as Hugh V. Brown's God is the Gardener.
Oh, yeah.
Probably the most, my brother, he's a friend and mentor, and my boss actually, he owns our company, but bottom line, he after I was I didn't want to let too much, I was a failure, but hey, he pointed me towards that talk, I remember, and I remember listening to it on a drive, and I'm bawling. Luckily, it was at night. Everybody's asleep in the back of the car. We're on a long car ride. But that to this day, that God is the gardener, and He's gonna cut the currant bush down to what He needs. Mm-hmm. And it's a powerful thing. We don't know why sometimes, and maybe in this life we won't. But the point is to be humble enough to understand that God is the gardener, and He is in charge, and directing our lives. And if we turn it over to Him, as you say, you can't question where He points you and how He wants to use you, what tool you want, as you said.
So cool. Oh, I love God.
Yeah,
so much.
It's good stuff.
I think that points us to where we want to go really well.
Yeah.
Talking about successes, talking about failures.
Yeah.
Let's talk about being grounded.
Yeah.
So you had that huge experience, but I'm sure you've had a lot of other hard experiences throughout your life.
Sure.
A lot of great experiences. Everybody wants to stay grounded in something.
Yeah.
So how, Chip, do you stay grounded when you're going through something hard?
I'll say in the moment, because a lot of social media, a lot of even everything about business and is about your daily regimen and getting up and plunging and this kind of thing.
Cold plunge.
And I'll say I've been rucking and plunging and working out and waking up early before all that stuff was cool. So, but
you were there before it was cool.
No, not I say that lightly.
Of course.
In a joking way. For me, honestly, though, hard exercise and hard work has always been a place to clear my mind. And where my going on a long run, or right now I'm less of a runner, more of a CrossFitter, but going and working out and just clearing my mind, getting in the zone, and pushing myself physically is a way for that. I say grounding. This is a way to get myself
Sure.
Yeah.
my headspace right.
Definitely,
And to
yeah.
blow off steam and get ready to at least get back to the basics. There's a number of ways to define grounding, and that's mentally, I guess you'd say, and spiritually for me and emotionally, if you will, that it comes back to the family and the home. There's nobody that knows me better and helps me more than my wife. Sometimes it's hard to hear or take, or sometimes but as empathetic and loving as she is, it's she's my wife and my family that's where my heart is. So it's a good place to be and a great place to ground myself. And the gospel is the bedrock of that relationship. And and the gospel is a gospel of action, gospel of service, right? And so it's them serving me if I'm in need of the grounding, and vice versa. And so it's the action verb that's involved in that, of being a disciple, and that's that of service, and that's kind of where it comes back to.
So as we've interviewed people and talked to them and asked them that question, I think it's so interesting that both the guests so far have said family. I didn't expect that from either guest. Like, that's not necessarily, where my mind goes first. And it's so curious to me that I've been learning.
Yeah.
As I've been doing this, the real foundation is, the family and how the Savior can minister to us through our family.
Yeah.
So that's my question to you. How has the Savior ministered to you through your family?
Wow. Well, man, that's a tough one. I think you have a vision for your family, or your how things are going to turn out. And I'll say I've got a great 5 kids, a boy, our oldest, and then 4 daughters, our oldest son, and 4 daughters. And my son has some health challenges that are pretty complicated, and and his are compared to other folks, and other challenges that people have, and his, it has, and those didn't come to light until he got home from his mission, and
Wow.
This was just within the last 18 months or so,
Wow.
2 years, and so slowing down, understanding, trying to support him, being empathetic, and helping his reality is a little different now, and how do we as a family, how do we navigate this, but also my son has got the biggest heart of anybody and he's never had a mean thought or said a bad word. Just the kindest kid you'd ever know, the most Christ-like kid. He's not a kid; he's a young man now. But but the point is, what we may have thought would be our future with him or with others, in our family, you quickly realize that none of those other earthly things matter. Really, it's about the relationship, and it's about what we can do to help support him. But I've learned more from him than I've ever been able to maybe impart to him, if you will. So, but I think it's, again, every family, relationships come and go, have challenges, and whether it's health or whether it's relationships or finances or job or whatever it might be, they come and go, and they all can come together, or they all have stuff that you may not even know of. One thing you do know is that everybody's got challenges, regardless of how shiny and great it looks on the veneer. Everybody's going through something, and so just having the patience with people, and even in your family, to understand that, try to understand from their point of view what's going on. Super important.
That resonates, clearly through your son's incredible health challenges and how hard that must be for him and for you, and for your wife to have to sit there and watch.
Yeah.
That's not easy, and the discovery of those things is never an easy thing. And it's interesting that you say, learning to, almost love the journey in a way has really helped you,
No,
and
that's a great way to put it.
and to be able to learn how the Savior is still ministering to your family during that time. It seems like you have a knack for finding the Savior in uncommon places. And I really want to ask this question, like with, like the importance of just staying grounded. You worked for, like Amazon, a humongous company.
Yeah.
And I feel like, like most people, when they think of that company, they think of, some like soulless, like machine that is just like operational.
Yeah.
And was there a moment where you saw the Savior even in such a big company like that?
Oh man, that's a tough one.
Sure.
You work crazy hours, and there's just hundreds and hundreds of people on that team, and great. It comes back to people, and where you see the Savior is individual relationships, people taking care of each other, even with. We had crews of hundreds on the shifts. I led one of the big, one of those great big buildings you see. And, so you got literally thousands of people coming in and out of that building every day. That then I was overall responsible for that building.
Wow.
And as a leader, you seek inspiration to make the right decisions and to know how to treat people, to stay in the right headspace, and be able to and Amazon it's a massive organization. There's curbs in place in so many ways that there's only so many things you could do to harm, but ultimately what you can do the most harm in is how you treat people, and or the most good. And so every day I woke up to try to be a light. Some of these people that take those jobs that are coming out of jail, some level of transition. There's people that are coming out of addictions or working through addictions, or they show up at midnight, many of them, to get your packages to your door by 8 a.m. Imagine that.
Straight up.
So these people are working.
Sacrifice
they're
the
working
scenes.
night shifts, and people that are not that everybody is in that position, but there's so many people that you come across that are in some level of transition, whether coming out of a marriage or their spouse is sick, and so it's their first entry into the workforce after years of being at home or whatever. The kinds of things that people are just trying to bootstrap out of life, and to try to breathe some level of light, was what I found to be really neat about working with people at Amazon. Again, the leaders, the people, it's a brilliant company. A lot of brilliant people at the top doing important, or doing things that obviously has value in the marketplace. But when it comes down to it, it's still a hugely human operation, and so many people and they're not that, again, everybody's in that transition of life type of scenario, but there were so many, and to hear their stories, and to hear their challenges, and to hear how employment is now helping them, and helping them, the coaching sessions of people, just trying to keep them moving in the right direction, so they don't lose the one thing they have to help feed them at that point in time. So it's really, really cool, valuable experience.
I think that's a great response. I think with every answer, story, experience you've shared with us, it's always come back to service and people for you.
Yeah.
You sound like you are about the one, and the Savior was also about the one.
Yeah.
That was his favorite number. He was
Absolutely.
always going after the one person that he could minister to.
Yeah.
And I think that goes to show that you obviously know business, but you also, know the Savior. You know his gospel, you know his scriptures. And I love that about you. That's been really fascinating to hear your stories and your responses, so thank you.
Thanks.
Looking forward to the last thing I want to talk about, just because I'm excited to learn what you're going to say to this one. So take it away.
Yeah. So, just like Dak said, we really just kind of set the stage for just, we've talked about dollars, we've talked about, your discipleship. And we just want to ask, right? Like, what is your best, 30-second gold nugget for someone who is trying to balance both discipleship and dollars?
Yeah. One is you don't have to choose between the two. That you can still be a disciple seeking to follow the Savior, and you can also be seeking to lead a business and an organization that's not necessarily a charitable organization or whatever. So you can lead a focus-driven team, and also be an example of the Savior. There are many times when I was in organizations that you couldn't express that, and in most businesses you're not out preaching, and so, but it's your example that matters most, and living the Word, and trying to reflect Him through how you act and treat people is what matters. So I think it's that balance. There's no better way than to serve people than the ones you work with every day. So
I love that. It's such a good answer.
Yeah, that's so good.
yeah.
My grandma always used to say, always bear testimony.
Yeah.
And when necessary, use words. So I think
that's a great way to put it.
Like everything you said kind of, just sums that up.
Yeah.
You're a man of service, and, bear testimony by your actions.
Yeah.
That's the most important thing. Minister to the one person that needs it.
Yeah.
And your life story has really gone to prove that.
Well, I appreciate it. I don't know. I just try every day to get a little bit better, and I think you look at folks at the end of life, and the resume, none of that stuff really matters. When you're at the end of life and you're perhaps on your deathbed or in an old folks home or whatever, you want to have your loved ones around you, and that's where you want to be, is to have created something that's valuable, which is that family and people that love you and want to be around you. Yeah. So that's what we all hope for.
I love that. Who is Jesus Christ to you? Like, what is your testimony? How did you come to know Him?
Yeah. So, I was 6 of 8 kids. I would say that one of the biggest influences on my testimony, aside from my family, which is sometimes it's hard to listen to your parents, and
I get that.
they put the Spirit in my life, I would say. It put me in the direction of that. But it was an experience, I would say. I was had an opportunity with my family to go to the Hill Cumorah pageant, which no longer exists, I don't think. But my brother-in-law was with us at the time, and I remember he had recently come home from his mission and married my sister, and we were there. And just the influence of being around him, he's a BYU professor, has had, at a young formative period, had probably one of the most impactful experiences on my testimony. And this is as a young man, being there in the vicinity of the sacred grove, and having those experiences in that venue was pretty impactful. And so at that time I learned that the gospel, that the Savior was real, and I learned that the Book of Mormon was true. And I've had examples, his and others, in my life to understand how to be a good dad and a good brother, and how to try to lead in the church and serve in the church, and the rest of it's just about trying to make a living. I had a cool opportunity to lead soldiers and do cool things that way, but ultimately it's still a job, right? And at some point you take the uniform off, and at some point you'll be out of a business, or you'll be done, or be on to the next thing. Yeah. But ultimately what matters is the people you're around and your family, and it's creating those relationships. So
I love that.
That's a phenomenal response.
Yeah.
Well, Chip, thank you for joining us today. This was a great episode. This was very powerful.
Thanks
for a powerful story.
Thank you for the invitation. This is a great endeavor. Look forward to hearing more of these in the future.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Well, thank you all for watching. We hope you've learned something from Chip Cook, because we sure have. It was a very powerful episode today. We are so excited for just what is to come. So this is Discipleship in Dollars. We'll see you next time.
See ya.